Howdy, howdy. What's going on? Welcome to the Back of the End Zone podcast. This is episode 3. I'm Josh Reisig, and I'm here with Bryant Koleski. And on today's episode, Bryant,
we are going to take an in-depth analysis look on our opinion of where Alabama football is right now. Every week we're going to start picking a team in college football from now until the college football season starts, and kind of look at what they have returning. If any of them have new coaches, any new personnel, quarterback changes, quarterback battles, and we're going to start with the one and only Alabama Crimson Tide. Been on top of the college football mountain for the last 15 years since Saban has been there, but the last 2 seasons have not gone the way Bama has intended, especially this past season, going 11-2. Not missing the college football playoff for only the second time in program history. So we're going to take a look at that, and then we got our first ever guest on today, Jake Crain, host of Crain and Company on the Daily Wire. Stay tuned for that, because
it's going to be a great episode today, and just stay tuned for even future episodes too, because every single week now we're just going to do our best to give you guys an in-depth analysis with our personal opinions, our perspectives on different things. We're going to try to give you guys a different outlook than the typical media is going to show you of certain players coming back, certain transfer players, and we just really hope you enjoy this episode, and it's time to take a look at Bama.
And let's bring on Jake right here. All right, everyone, this is Jake Crain, a co-host of his show on the Daily Wire, Crain and Company, an awesome show. I mean, I've been a fan since it was formerly the J Boy Show on the Volume. They moved over to the Daily Wire, and man, being a part of the Booster Club and their community over there has been amazing. Not only for me, but just connecting with people and whatnot. So, how you doing, Jake?
Man, number one, I appreciate you guys having me on as your first guest. Congrats on launching the show. Excited to see how you guys do. But yeah, man, excited to come on. I mean, it's a crazy time of year right now, but it's always football season. So man, ready to get it rocking and rolling. Like I told you, man, I need that hoodie though.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said a couple weeks ago, the off season is such an underrated part of football. I mean, it's become so invested now, not only in college but also in the NFL. I mean, free agency is a full go.
That's the best part of the football season is the offseason.
Exactly.
Well, it's the anticipation, right? Like my fiance was just gone for 2 weeks. Like 10 minutes before she got here, I was excited as I've been in a long time.
Oh yeah. So today we're discussing Alabama. Didn't have this type of season you thought we all thought they would have had last year. I know from watching you picked them to win it all last year, and of course, and I mean, I'm a Bama fan, so I'm a little biased, and I thought they had the team to really put on a show, but it didn't go that way, and now you have Bryce Young leaving, you have Jahmyr Gibbs leaving, you have Will Anderson, some of the stars of last year's team leaving, going to the draft. And also you have 2 new coordinators coming in. Where do you kind of see Alabama right now as far as, having Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele come in, new quarterback battle? Where do you just see them as of right now going into the spring?
Well, look, I mean, when you recruit at the level that Alabama recruits at, you're always going to be relevant. You're always going to have good players. Great players beats great coaching 100% of the time. There's been a lot of bad coaches that have won with great players. There's not a lot of great coaches that have won with bad players. So what Alabama's done recruiting, I mean, that's why, it's amazing to still watch them bring in number 1 classes. But now it's gotten to the point where that's kind of the standard. That's not surprising us anymore. So from that element, Alabama is always going to be relevant when you're talking about championships. Now, I would love, as a fan of another team, to get to a point where double-digit wins can be a down season. Man, that must be nice. I wonder what that's like. But when I look at this team going forward, when you look at up front, I know you're losing Will Anderson. I'm not worried about Alabama's personnel up front. I think a little bit of that has been overblown. When you look at the quarterback position, it's what everybody always talks about. And Georgia's having to replace their quarterback. Alabama's obviously having to replace Bryce Young. It's going to come down to, in my opinion, if they're going to do a two-man system early, they'll eventually figure it out. But I don't think Nick's going to do that. Jalen Milroe has an advantage, and they're going to go as far as the quarterback takes them. Now, when you look at that wide receiver room, that was where I think Bama was the most let down last year.
Yeah.
Bryce Young, to me, did more with less than maybe any quarterback in the country in primetime games when you're going up against NFL DBs. So, look, Alabama's going to be right there. Right now, I'm leaning. I haven't made any predictions yet, but I'm obviously leaning toward LSU to win the West because they return a quarterback. You know, that roster is very healthy. Brian Kelly's got a lot of momentum, and they already beat Alabama, you know, in his first year. So it isn't like this mountain that they're having to keep climbing and climbing. So, look, Alabama's going to be right there. I think they're going to have a chance to make the playoff. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to that quarterback position, and we're going to see.
With the quarterback position, I want to know how you feel with Bama bringing in the new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, and him with some former NFL coaching experience and also some college experience too. Like, do you think that he has what it takes to bring Bama's offense back to what it used to be and what it needs to be at under Nick Saban?
Yeah, what I think you're going to get a little more out of Tommy Rees's balance, right? It seemed like Bill O'Brien, and look, a lot of it is built in with Bryce too. Now, when you're running those RPO actions and you sit there and say, oh, well, we threw 45 passes. Well, it could have been a run play. There could be 8 to 10 RPOs a game where 5 of the time Bryce kept it and spit it out. Whether they catch it or not, who knows? But a little bit of that, I think, was overblown as well on Bill O'Brien. But when Alabama and when any team or offense is good, they have balance. That's what kills you. As a defensive guy, I would much rather face a team that was really good at one thing, maybe the pass game, but couldn't run it very well because I can pigeonhole you a certain way. What Tommy Rees is going to bring back to Alabama is that 12 personnel, smash mouth run game off of play action. My biggest thing is Ty Simpson can run. We know Jalen Milroe is a huge problem in the run game. I think if Jalen Milroe can throw it good enough, he's going to be your guy because what he does in that box, he takes eyes off the running back. He takes defensive ends and has to stack them. They can't overplay it. Safeties worry about him in the run game. Linebackers can't take their eyes off of him. You got to spy him in coverage, which takes a guy off his landmark to try and keep him controlled. So there's a lot more different variables with Jalen Milroe that Tommy Rees can use. But it's going to come down to balance. Now, I think people need to understand when you take the offensive coordinator job at Alabama, you're running a system that lends itself to really what Nick wants. Now, Tommy Rees isn't going to have the leash that Bill O'Brien had. Bill O'Brien's been a head coach in high-level college football. He's been a head coach in the NFL. He's got a little more cachet. I think Saban is going to give him a little more leash than what he's going to do with Tommy Rees. One example of that is when you become the offensive coordinator at Alabama, your terminology becomes their terminology, not the other way around. Typically, when offensive coordinators come in, their terminology becomes the terminology, not at Alabama. You're going to call things the way the defense calls them. Why? It makes practice easier. It makes prep easier. It makes communication easier. So I think Tommy Rees is in a really good spot, and he's going to have better players. That goes back to my first point. I can look like a genius if I have better players than you.
That's true. I agree.
And another thing we want to touch on is bringing in Kevin Steele. You know, he's been there before. He's coached with Saban before. He's done it at Auburn, had some great defenses at Auburn. And you see Alabama's defense where struggled last year, not up front, but like in the secondary. You saw it against Tennessee. Jalen Hyatt going for 5 touchdowns in that game. In the secondary, when it comes to stopping, you know, James Daniels and that crew at LSU last year, they really struggled. I mean, not only just last year, but the last few years in the secondary, Bama has struggled. Can Kevin Steele really bring back the secondary to where it needs to be for Alabama?
Well, look, this is Nick Saban's defense. I mean, let's make no mistake. Just like Georgia's defense is really Kirby Smart's defense. Now, I think both of them, Nick and Kirby, have done an unbelievable job of being able to play both sides because you can fall in this trap when you become a head coach of, well, I'm a defensive guy, so I'm going to hang out more with the defense. Then all of a sudden, those offensive guys start to see you as the villain a little bit instead of the head coach. That's kind of the trick. But they're going to run what Nick runs. I think you're going to see him adjust. I think what Kevin Steele in his 300 years of coaching and Nick Saban in their 300 years of coaching, they're going to be able to get the right answers. What it comes down to is making the play. Like a lot of time, it's not the call. It's making the play. How many times was a Bama defender there last year and an opposing receiver there, and the receiver made the play? Alabama has made their living of putting guys in the right position and then letting them go kick your ass because they beat you at birth. Now teams, when you look at recruiting, have kind of found ways. The rules are always slanted toward the offense. We all know that. They don't invent rules that help defenses, or they call offensive targeting every time a running back lowered his head. But a lot of it is about fundamentals and going up and making the play. So whether that's getting back to the fundamentals, which I don't think Saban ever left them, I think you got to get better play from the players. Now, that does fall on the coaching. You brought their ass in, so it's on you for them to play well. So they've got to go attack the ball when they get a chance. It's not just about the call. It's about how you ball.
100%. And I think, I mean, Kevin Steele, yeah, like you said, 300 years of coaching experience, already had his stint at Bama way back, stint at Auburn, stint at Miami most recently, couple NFL stints way back in his early career. I was going to ask, with the way that Bama is headed, do you think that with Kevin Steele's years of experience, do you think that Alabama may be potentially looking to pass the torch a couple of years down the road? Maybe not even a couple of years, maybe 5-6 years down the road. With Saban getting older, do you think that they could be looking to pass the torch to a new head coach like Kevin Steele, or potentially someone else that's younger?
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to pass the torch from Nick Saban to Kevin Steele, that's kind of like the crypt keeper handing it to the oldest man in the world. I think it would be somebody that's younger. But here's what Nick Saban, I'm not going to sit here and try and guess how much longer Nick's going to go. All right, I'm under the firm belief of he's going to get so old, technology is going to catch up and they're going to fuse him with a robot. And the Sabatron 3000 is going to roam the Alabama sidelines forever, like that new Chat GBT thing. You just ask it a question, and Nick Saban just gives you an answer. But eventually he's going to have to give it away. I still firmly believe, and remember I said this, I think Bill O'Brien may be the next coach at Alabama, head coach. And Alabama would say, whoa, you're crazy. They never do that. But in the same breath, they say, oh, it's going to be Lane Kiffin. If you knew what went down between Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban while he was at Bama, you would realize how asinine that statement is. The way Nick Saban has built the Alabama program up one way, almost militaristic style, right? Structurally. I know where you're at. We're always getting better. We're doing things that help the team. Every second of the day is segmented. So you're going to go from that to Lane Kiffin, who's going to play golf with the quarterbacks and probably taking them to play beach volleyball instead of doing inside drill? That will never happen. Nick is not going to hand, because Nick's going to choose. He's not going to hand this thing off to Hunter Biden to run the Alabama team. That's crazy. I think what you're going to see is, I was on the firm belief if Nick would have won it a couple of years ago, if they would have beat Georgia, he would have retired. I think he would have been done. That's why I said after Georgia won, this is the worst thing to happen to college football if you're anybody but an Alabama fan, because now Nick's pissed off. At this point, dog, I'm from Auburn. Go win it again and retire. Just let's cut our losses, shake hands, great job. Let's get the next guy in here so he can blow it.
And, you know, you alluded to this last week on your show about the SEC scheduling. And, you know, Nick had some comments about that, about the three opponents that they're supposedly going to be given, LSU, Tennessee, and Auburn. And I know you made the comment that, you know, Nick's not going to be there forever, and that's what he's accommodating for. With the new SEC scheduling, do you think that's the right way to like for the SEC to go? I mean, I agree with getting rid of the divisions, but the three permanent rivals, do you feel like that's the right decision?
For sure. Well, what is the whole point of scheduling in conference? Everybody plays everybody, right? You try and make it as even as possible. It'll never be fair, but life's not fair. But that doesn't mean you can't try to make it as even as possible. So with 16 teams, and if they add an in-conference game with no divisions, the way they're doing it with the permanent rivals and the others that rotate, you can play every team home and away in a 4-year career span. Is that not the whole point of scheduling? Now, when you do something like that, obviously somebody's going to get the short end of the stick. It just, by some miracle stroke of God, happened to be Alabama. It's about time Alabama got the short end of the stick. The rest of us have been getting the short end of the stick going on about 15 years now. So it's about time that everything didn't get catered to Alabama, or it wasn't, things weren't moved around just to make Saban feel better about it before he does an Aflac commercial. Look, is it tough? Yeah, but guess what? We got Bama, Georgia. They felt so bad for Auburn, they gave us Vanderbilt. They basically gave us a bye week. So I don't look. It's all cyclical. It's all cyclical. If Florida's on your schedule right now, you're not nearly as scared of them as you may be in 4 to 5 years when they get it rolling. So at some point, it's all going to come back. I don't understand why Saban did that, because it doesn't accomplish anything. And then you open the door for guys like Brian Kelly to be like, we're not afraid here at LSU, so you can just step right in and try and one-up Saban. Typically, Saban does things, there's always a reason. And the reason is it's always helping. So I'm not going to doubt him because he's just proven it over and over again. Just in my mind, I'm trying to figure out what good could come out of basically saying we don't want to play these teams. I don't see that.
I completely agree with you. And I was, probably one of the few Bama fans that agreed with the three teams we were given, because I see Auburn, LSU, and Tennessee as our three biggest rivals. Out of all the rivalries that we have, those are the three most entertaining, and those are the three, most, traditional in Alabama football. So why would you want those to go away?
Yeah, I thought the whole point of this, everybody was complaining, was that, we're going to lose rivalries. Well, what this did was cement rivalries. Again, what do you want? The reason Saban's upset is because those three schools have money. That's the thing. They can afford to compete with Bama. That's why he was the most upset. I don't think Saban's afraid to play anybody on the field. It's just that now I know for a fact I am playing these three cash machines that can compete with me in NIL, that can compete with me in resources, that if they get it rolling, can compete with me in recruiting. I think that is what he was complaining about the most, even though I don't agree with it.
And we talked about this on, I think, our first episode, possibly. No, it was actually last week's episode. We were talking about how I think, and we both think, that almost every Power 5 conference is probably going to follow this, because you think about it, especially the Big Ten, for example, being a Big Ten fan, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, all on one side of the conference, all on the east side. They're probably going to end up making something where they're going to have three permanent conference rivals every single year, and then kind of just even it out and open up the conference, especially with USC and UCLA coming in.
Yeah, well, the SEC just did it in baseball too. I don't even think this is just a football thing. Well, we are going to get to a point where no conference has divisions. The Pac-12's already gotten rid of them. The Big Ten's going to get rid of them. They're getting rid of the Big 12. It doesn't have them. And the SEC is going to go to that 9-game in-conference schedule, no division. They don't give you three permanent rivals, then put you in a division. That's not how that works.
Yeah. So we want to shift our focus to the NFL. Of course, the big trade that went down, I think it was last Friday, the Bears and the Panthers agreeing to trade the number 1 overall pick. Who do you think the Panthers are eyeing in that pick? Because it came at a, and I've seen people say this, it came at a peculiar time, especially right after the combine. It seemed like they may have rushed to move up and get maybe the guy that they want. Who do you feel like the Panthers are eyeing with that first pick?
Man, look, I'm on the firm belief of they're not going to tell you what they're doing. So you're hearing C.J. Stroud, right? You're hearing they moved up to get Anthony Richardson. They were so blown away. I think they're getting Bryce Young. I think it's almost like in coaching searches, right? The first guy you hear never gets it. That's never how it works. It's always somebody else. I don't think they're going to come out and say, we moved up to the number 1 pick to get this guy, because they still have the ability to trade that pick back. Now, if you come out, they probably leaked the C.J. Stroud thing because they might think the Texans want C.J. Stroud. Oh, well, we'll trade with you. We'll go from 2 to 1 so we can get C.J. Stroud. Deep down, y'all really wanted they really wanted Bryce Young, so they win and they get something on top of that trade. They're not going to just trade it for nothing. So I think they're going to get Bryce Young. Here's my thing. The Bears won the trade.
Oh, 100%.
They won the trade for sure. Now you get DJ Moore to put alongside Darnell Mooney, add another couple pieces. You got Cole Kmet at tight end. You've got tons of cap space to go get guys. You got rid of Robert Quinn.
Yeah.
You got rid of Roquan Smith. You have a ton of room to make moves. I am buying the Bears and the Lions in the AFC or the NFC North over the next 3 to 5 years. You look at Aaron Rodgers, maybe leaving the Packers. Again, I really, really like what Detroit and Chicago is doing when it comes to everything but gun violence.
It's also huge, too, because the Panthers getting rid of DJ Moore and the Bears getting their first-round pick next year. That first-round pick next year could potentially be a top-5 pick, more than likely. I think
look again, you're setting yourself up where I think one of the reasons I think they won the trades because they kept Justin Fields. Everybody that was like, oh, the Bears need to get rid of Justin Fields. Are you high? Football is a sport that one person cannot win. But Justin Fields came about as close as I've ever seen anybody doing it in the NFL last year. Exactly. He was the whole team. It was who? Him and Cole Kmet After Darnell Mooney got hurt, David Montgomery's a good back, but he's not making the Hall of Fame, and that's what you had to have to be able to function with that offense. Can you imagine if Justin Fields was on the Eagles, they wouldn't have lost a game. I'm telling you, they wouldn't have lost a game. They would have gone undefeated. You put Justin Fields around the same personnel that Jalen Hurts has, and they will mop people up.
Yes, and of course, Jalen Ramsey going to the Dolphins. A
Yeah.
lot of I want to say questions about Tua's health. If he can stay healthy, do you think the Dolphins and they picked up his 5th-year option kind of early? They had a lot of time to do it. Do you think the Dolphins are still maybe eyeing to move on from Tua, even though they're making the right moves? They're getting Jalen Ramsey. They're making the defense better. Where do you see the Dolphins? I mean.
Well, they got Mike White as well, which I thought that was a good pickup. The guy who played for the Jets last year. But look, it's all tied to his health. I don't care if Jalen Ramsey goes over there, Aaron Donald goes over there, Achilles goes over there. If Tua can't stay healthy, they are not going to be able to make it to the Super Bowl. Now, you can sit here and say, man, I just hope if Tua gets hurt, because I think they're planning on Tua to get hurt. You always want a good backup, but Tua's proven to you have to plan for the worst case scenario. And I know he's taking jiu-jitsu this offseason, but if you haven't learned how to get tackled, and as long as you've played the game now, I don't think you're ever going to learn it, to be honest. Like me, I don't know math when you start putting different letters in it and different signs. I can do long division. I can add, subtract, and do all the things to live a productive life. But I'm not going to all of a sudden, 33 years old, be like, you know what? I'm going to take up finite math. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like Tua is going to get hurt at some point. Mike White is going to have to come in. I'm guessing the Dolphins are just trying to put enough pieces around him where it takes away as much of the effect of not having a legitimate quarterback can. Mike White's okay, but they're not winning the Super Bowl. And that's the goal when you make the moves that you made. I'm hearing Austin Eckler may end up at the Dolphins. He's trying to get out of the Chargers organization quicker than a hiccup because I don't believe in Brandon Staley either. So, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Tua's health. It's all tied to Tua's health, and that's the gamble you take.
And Jay, one more question. Who do you see winning March Madness? This football podcast, we're going to have some fun with this last question.
Man, this year it's as wide open as I have ever seen. I agree with that. Houston was my pick until Marcus Sasser got hurt. Groins and ankles and hammies, those things take time. And you're not playing curling. This is basketball. You have to run. Right now, I liked Purdue, but I don't trust them to be able to hit open shots. I don't think their guards shoot well enough, even though Newman and the kid with the headband, Jenkins, I believe, have been absolutely on fire going through the Big Ten tournament. But if I had to pick a winner, man, which I've done about 18 times in different brackets, which, by the way, we have a bracket challenge at Crain Company on Yahoo. I put it on social. You can find it. Man, I'm going to go Arizona. I know they always blow it. Like an Arizona fan, it's like, oh, my God, somebody's picking us. We're going to blow it. I know Lute Olson didn't walk into that locker room anytime soon, but I can just feel it, man. I don't know. I feel like Arizona ends up taking out Bama. I believe the Elite Eight. I don't know if they mean the Elite Eight, Final Four, somewhere around there. I've done so many different brackets now. I'm just trying to figure out, can Missouri beat Utah State in some of these 8-9 matchups? Just who the hell knows?
Yeah, since Bama actually has a legitimate shot to actually win it this year, I'm being obnoxious and I'm picking.
Yeah, well, they're the number one overall seed. I don't really think you're being obnoxious or going out on a limb. They're the favorite.
For me, it's easier this year making my bracket because usually I'm always biased with Ohio State making it pretty far, and we always blow it in the first round. So this year,
y'all made a little run in that Big Ten tournament.
Yeah,
I thought maybe y'all
I
figured it out.
I think Penn State has potential to make a run in the tournament after the way they performed in the Big Ten tournament. I think Penn State can make a huge run.
Hell, South Alabama almost made it. That just tells you something.
Yeah, I know. Play better at the end. Good Lord, I could have told you that with Turbo Jones though.
Actually, Bama in baseball tonight.
South's playing Bama baseball tonight. Give me the Jags. Y'all know is it at Stanky? Is it at the Stank?
It's at Stanky.
It's at the Stank.
But anyway, Jake, thank you for coming on, man. We appreciate it. This means the world to us. So we really appreciate you coming on, being our first guest, and hopefully later on we can get you back on. Have David Cohen on, Blaine Crain.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked out Crain Company, please do so. They're on the Daily Wire, Daily Wire Plus, Apple, Spotify, just about any platform, YouTube. Their show is awesome. No politics involved. They do incredible work with who they bring on. And they know ball. A lot of shows they don't know ball, and go check out Crain & Company.
Oh, man, I appreciate it, guys. I'm always down to come on. Good luck, man. I'm supporting you guys. I think y'all are going to knock it out of the park. Just keep grinding. And, yeah, man, whenever y'all need me, let's enjoy the madness.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you
All right,
much.
y'all be good.
I appreciate it, man.
See y'all. All right, Brian. See you, buddy.
See ya. We just finished that interview with Jake. You're great. He had a lot of great points to say. Always a pleasure to talk to Jake. He's been a good friend of mine for a little bit over a year now, and what he's got going on with his show is just incredible. You need to go check it out. Anyway, back to his points about Alabama. He made good points about Alabama's still going to be Alabama even after a letdown year for them. And I'm an Alabama fan. I will say, people, other fans of other teams will say, 11-2. That's still really good, but for Bama standards, it's not. Bama standards every year is to make the college football playoff and to win a national championship. They did not do that. They did not meet the standards that previous teams had set beforehand. I mean, ever since Saban won that first national title against Texas, the goal and the expectation has been every year is to make it and play for a national championship, and they did not do that this year. So, but even without doing that, they still brought in the number one recruiting class. Without the coordinators, for the most part, they still didn't lose. When Pete Golding went to Ole Miss and then Bill O'Brien went to New England to the NFL, they still retained a lot of these recruits. And starting off the guy I like the most that they got was the safety Caleb Downs from Mill Creek High School in Georgia. Dude is probably going to be a day one starter. They got 2 running backs that I really like. They got a quarterback that could really, we're going to talk about the quarterback battle a little bit later on, but he could really potentially shake up things in the quarterback battle. They got probably brought in the best defensive class I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the names are just ridiculous here. I mean, and what they've done, they got in the number one edge rusher from Keon Keeley. Running backs, Richard Young and Justice Haynes stole one out of the Dogs' backyard. A guy that I expect to make a big impact is junior college transfer Malik Benson, wide receiver. Dude's got a lot of speed. I've seen this dude's highlights. This dude could be a Jameson Williams type of impact player. And then they got 2 transfers so far in the first wave of the transfer portal. It's supposed to open back up after spring ball. They got Tresman Marshall, linebacker from Georgia, who's a really good player. Didn't see much of the field at Georgia, which is why he transferred. But from Georgia fans I know that are good friends of mine, they rave about this kid, his work ethic. He's pretty good. Then a guy I really like. I mean, I can say I really like all these guys, but like this, and I think we'll see a lot more action than people expect, especially since he's a tight end. But C.J. Dupree from Maryland, I think, is a huge pickup. That people say he's got that. I don't want to say Rob Gronkowski, but he's got that kind of edge to him where he can go up and catch anything. He can block. He can run routes. I don't want to say he's like Brock Bowers, because Brock Bowers is special in his own right. But, but this kid is special as well. So what Bama has brought in recruiting, even after this down year and after losing both coordinators, is really impressive, and they're looking to make another run at it next year's recruiting class with bringing in a 5-star quarterback. But another thing that we wanted to highlight was the 2 new coordinator hires in Tommy Rees and Kevin Steele.
Exactly, and Tommy Rees is coming in as a new offensive coordinator at Bama, which is a big role to fill. Yeah. And just like Jake was saying, our guest earlier, obviously, like, this team is still Saban's team. Saban's still going to be running this team, running the offense and defense, making it the way that he wants it to be. But these guys are coming in to fill a role and to help Saban. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens this year, especially for me with Tommy Rees, because coming from Notre Dame, Tommy Rees developed Michael Mayer there. And Michael Mayer is going to be one of the top tight ends in the draft this year. And he broke several Notre Dame records there. Tommy Rees also coached a couple somewhat solid quarterbacks between Jack Cohn, Ian Book, some of those names. But to me,
what he did with those guys was pretty remarkable, considering, and I'm not trying to call it Notre Dame here, but the talent level of Alabama and Notre Dame, there's a bit of a gap. We've seen that twice now.
Exactly.
In the Saban era between Notre Dame and Alabama. But I agree. Like what Tommy Rees has to work with at Bama.
It's a lot more than what he had to work with at Notre Dame. Because you look at quarterbacks like Jack Cohn and Ian Book; those were good quarterbacks, but they're nowhere near a Bryce Young, a Mac Jones.
Jalen Milroe and
Yeah,
Ty Simpson
exactly.
don't have
These guys, exactly. So Tommy Rees is going to have a lot more to work with,
Yeah.
a lot more firepower, a lot more exciting things for him. He's probably super excited, shaking, so
And
excited.
then next year he'll get the number 2 quarterback in the class.
Exactly.
Julian Say, and
Yeah, and he has the verbal commitment through that, and so it'll be interesting. But I think one of the things I'm more excited for, Bryant just touched base on C.J. Dupree coming in from Maryland. As a Big Ten fan, he was a great tight end. Didn't have any crazy numbers, but last year he had 30 receptions for a little bit over 300 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, and with Tommy Rees developing Michael Mayer, I think that we're going to see the tight end action. The tight end's getting in a lot more action than we've seen in more recent years. And also with Tommy Rees coming in, he had back-to-back years coaching Kyron Williams, where Kyron Williams rushed for over 1,000 yards, back-to-back seasons. And just like Jake said earlier in the podcast, Bama hasn't seen as much running in more recent years. The thing is, with bringing in Tommy Rees, they're going to be a lot more balanced, a lot more RPOs, a lot more designed run plays for Jalen Milroe if Jalen Milroe is the starting quarterback. And it'll just be interesting to see Bama not relying as much on the pass and pounding it more on the runs.
And early in Saban's tenure, that was the goal, was making you commit to the run so much that he could thrive off the pass to Julio Jones or to Amari Cooper when he came through, Calvin Ridley.
Exactly.
And then when Lane Kiffin came in, they went to the spread style of offense, but they still kept it centered around the run game with Derrick Henry, Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs.
And you look at the running backs that we had back in Nick Saban. Not saying that the more recent running backs have not been good. That's not what I'm saying. But you look at the Derrick Henrys, the Mark Ingrams, the Alvin Kamaras, the Josh Jacobs, and like those guys were insanely good. And I think next year that's also going to help and bring up, say Jace McClellan for example. He had over 600 yards last year. I think that's Tommy Rees is going to pound the ball, and like we're going to see a lot more run plays. And it'll just be exciting to see. I mean, I'm not even a Bama fan, but I'm just excited to see Bama not relying on the pass as much.
Not only did Bama go heavy on defense in this class, they went heavy on offense, bringing in the number 1 tackle in our offensive line, because they're going to need that in this. I mean, they brought in number one tackle and Caden Proctor, who flipped from Iowa to Bama, and they also got some other guys on the offensive line. They went heavy O-line and defense in this class, and you can see why. I mean, Saban wants to get back to that, and you can say the spread offense and what Josh Heupel's doing at Tennessee, and what we've seen before with Bama, the spread offense, the quick tempo, the high tempo offenses, up tempo offenses. But if you really look at the past 2 years, where Georgia has made a living off of pounding the rock first, and then
relying on the pass and having those guys there.
Tight ends like Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington, but also having those guys like A.D. Mitchell, like Tremaine Burton when he was there, and some other guys at Georgia that, but this isn't about Georgia, it's about Bama. But I think that's where Saban's wanting to get back to, because he's seeing it work at Georgia with Kirby Smart and what they're doing. So I think he's trying to get back to pounding the rock, having a little bit more balance on offense, like Jake said, making you respect the run. And then you want to talk about the quarterback battle. I was under the impression, I was, to begin with, and still I kind of am a guy that's really high on Ty Simpson. I think for now, I think he could potentially win the job. But watch out for Jalen Milroe, because if he can become just half
the passer that Bryce was, he'll definitely have that starting job. And yes, Ty Simpson is definitely a lot better in the pocket, a lot better passer than Jalen Milroe is. And I mean, we've seen that, but Jalen Milroe can use his legs. And you think about Tommy Rees's offense, the way that he ran it at Notre Dame, Tommy Rees never had a running quarterback. And if you think throwing in someone like Jalen Milroe that can actually use his legs, and not that you need to rely on the legs, but like I said earlier, there's just going to be a lot more play-designed runs for Jalen Milroe if he wins that starting job. And it'll just be interesting to see how that pans out.
And Jalen Milroe, I mean, like Jake alluded to, the things he can do with his legs really put some attention, because, and we were talking about this before the show, Bryce had mobility and he could run, but he didn't do it often. He wasn't, teams didn't spy Bryce because they knew he more than likely wasn't going to run unless he was pressured. The only time you really saw Bryce run was when he was being pressured, and even when he was scrambling, he was still looking to throw, and the running was just a last option pretty much. So, but now if Jalen Milroe is that guy, he can bring a whole new element to the
offense. Yeah,
kind of like what we saw with Jalen Hurts. I mean, that was and what's his name? Blake Sims kind of brought that. Was the first quarterback under Saban's tenure to kind of bring the running style. Then Jalen Hurts came in and really. But if Jalen Milroe can just become somewhat of an accurate passer, he doesn't. If he can just throw it well enough, like Jake said, if he can just throw it good enough to get the ball to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
He will be.
He will have that job, and it's a huge dual threat too. And I mean, another thing to look at too is Bama plays Middle Tennessee week 1. So I mean, going into week 1 in college football, you obviously don't have a preseason. Going into week 1, they could throw in both. We can see both Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson.
Who's the starter until the Texas game.
Exactly. They both might get playing time. They might split halves in the first game of the season, and it'll just really be interesting to see how that pans out. And I mean, as a Bama fan, you're sitting here wondering like, who's the heir to the throne? Because when you're a fan of a prestigious elite university football team, like as an Ohio State fan, like who's the heir of C.J. Stroud? Who's the heir of Bryce Young? Like you want someone to fill those shoes, and you want someone to step in right away. And the question is like, is Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson that guy? Like, do you want the mobility out of Jalen Milroe, then like also hope that he can throw the ball a little bit better? Or do you want Ty Simpson, who's a good pocket passer, like great awareness, but like can he run as much as Jalen Milroe will be able to run? So
and I ever since Jalen Hurts became the starter at Alabama as a freshman, I've never had a doubt of who Alabama's next quarterback is going to be because you saw it time and time again. They went from Greg McElroy to A.J. McCarron. They went from A.J. McCarron to Blake Sims, who's still in that 1 year, took him to the playoff. Then you went from Blake Sims to Jake Coker, then to Jalen Hurts. All these guys that are able to play at an elite level and get Bama to where they were. Then from Jalen to Tua, I want to compare this quarterback situation kind of like to Mac Jones and Bryce Young going into 2020. Everybody thought Bryce Young was just going to come in as a freshman and completely wipe Mac Jones off the face of the earth as far as being a starter, and that didn't happen. Mac Jones became the starter
and won a national championship.
Took the team undefeated, won a national championship, and played his way into the first round and had a great rookie year in New England. So, I mean, it's not always the case, and it could be the same situation here with Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson where people think it should be Ty Simpson or that Ty Simpson is going to win the job, but Jalen Milroe can take this leap that we haven't seen yet, and Jalen Milroe can have that type of season. Now, who knows? But that's just where I'm at with. I think either one could step in, maybe game 2 against Texas and win the game.
Yeah,
I would be fine with either one. I trust Nick Saban on this decision because it's ultimately going to be his decision. It's not. No disrespect to Tommy Rees, but I think it's going to be Nick Saban's decision. Yeah,
and just like we were saying with Jake earlier, looking at the defense, Kevin Steele coming in with his 300-something years of experience, like, yes, he's the defensive coordinator, but it's still Saban's defense. Yeah. And regardless, Saban's still going to be making the calls. Like, we're going to see it happen. Like, yes, Steele still had his stint at Bama. He was at Auburn. He was at a ton of SEC schools, LSU. Like, he has that SEC experience. He knows what to expect. But we're still going to be seeing Saban make the calls, but it'll be interesting too to see what happens with these returning players because you guys have a lot of returning players at Bama, like Malachi Moore. He's been very good for Bama. His freshman year, I feel like, was his best year. But like last year and going into his senior year this year, like he hasn't played the way that I think everyone has anticipated. Yeah. So he's having a heavily touted senior year come in. Same with looking at other guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like your D line is super young, and you guys have Keon Keeley and all these other young pieces on the line. Exactly, and like
a potential, top 5 draft pick next year. We had a little bit of an underwhelming year, but you've seen what he can do. On Bama's defense, where it has to get better, is linebacker, middle linebacker play, and DBs. DBs were, and forget Kool-Aid McKinstry. He was not, and he was the one who played really well. And then Eli Ricks came on strong at the end of the season when he got his playing opportunity. But now he's going to the draft. But DB is where, especially in safety, where you're losing Jordan Battle,
You're losing
losing
DeMarco
Ryan Finch,
Helms too,
Marco
and
Helms, and then you're losing another corner in Eli Ricks, and now you have Terry and Arnold coming. And Earl Little Jr., who will be battling that spot out because, and Terry and Arnold was good last year, but there were times where he, and Jake alluded to this, where you've seen this before, where a Bama DB has great coverage, great jam at the line, but then he lets the guy, catch the 50-50 ball, or Bama gets a holding. A lot of Bama's struggles last year in the secondary came from an unnecessary holding call. And you might remember this from the Tennessee game. Kool-Aid McKinstry had a game-sealing interception, but it was called back. Whether you agree with the call or not, it was called back because of a defensive holding or defensive pass interference, and that's what cost Bama the game ultimately.
Yep.
I mean, so you just see it time and time again where the play has to, and people want to say, oh, it was Pete Golding. It was a little bit of both, but like Jake said, it's about the playing on the field. The play at DB has to get better. I don't have a problem. I'm not worried about linebacker. They got some studs at linebacker that are coming in this year that I think will play really well. And going to Kevin Steele, he had great linebacker play and great front seven play at Auburn. And Auburn is,
exactly, and he's going to bring back that aggressive Bama defense. Not that you guys have always had an aggressive defense, but him coming back with his 39 years of coaching experience, he is going to bring an aggressive, mouth-punching defense that's going to come and literally just be ferocious and feared by offenses. So
I look for the defense to be a lot better this year. The offense is, where my concern is, not because of quarterback, but because of wide receivers.
Yeah, the pieces around it, because you got what? You got Kobe Prentice, Isaiah Bond, you have a couple other guys like Jermaine Burton, and I think that's your biggest guy coming back.
Well, to me, the biggest guy coming back, and he's a junior this year, is Ja'Cory Brooks. He was really the leader. Came on strong at the end of last year as a sophomore. Ja'Cory Brooks, I think, is the clear wide receiver one right now. But as Jake alluded to, that's where Bama was let down the most. I feel like.
Exactly, but the good thing about that, though, is bringing in Tommy Rees, especially with the questionable wide receivers. Now you have an offensive coordinator coming in who's going to be not run heavy, but it's going to be 50-50 between the run and the pass. And so you have that balance of who knows if your wide receivers are going to be good this year. You can rely on the run.
And, the wide receivers, I think, are going to be much better. They got rid of some of them that were borderline toxic and just kind of there just for racking up yards, or they transferred out. But I think they'll be a lot better this year. The freshmen that played last year, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law, Isaiah Bond, Shaz Preston, those guys I think will get a lot of shine this year, especially Isaiah Bond. I cannot speak any more highly enough about Isaiah Bond. I really like him and Kobe Prentice.
Yeah, I do too.
That receiver class they brought in last year with those three, Kendrick Law, Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, and some other guys, I really high on that class. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Malik Benson, the transfer coming in from. Let's see, let me find it. I forget where he's coming from, but he's from Hutchinson Community College. I mean, that kid is fast. I think Bama's receiving corps will be much better, and it has to be because this was the first time in really it seems forever that Bama didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver or a 1,000-yard rusher. This is the first time in Saban's tenure where he didn't have either or.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes people question. We saw it all over the media after this year. People were questioning, is Bama falling off? Are they on that slippery slope decline? And I think the answer always, even after a year with 2 losses, no.
No.
Bama is not on a slippery slope. They're not on a decline. You look at who they have coming back, people will say, oh, they got a new offensive coordinator, they got a new defensive coordinator. It doesn't matter. You still have Nick Saban as your head coach, and you still have all of these top recruits coming in every single year, and guys transferring in. Even though you guys lost so many guys transferring out, you lost a ton of guys transferring out. Yeah. Your team is Bama's still going to be a top 4 team and make the playoff next year. It's still going to happen.
I don't know about that. I'll pump the brakes on that just yet. I mean, like I told you last week, I think LSU wins the SEC, but that's just right now. We'll see as it gets into spring ball. But Bama's going to be Bama. Don't make no mistake about that. And with the 12-team playoff coming next year, that just gives an opportunity for them to be more flexible in the schedule. They don't have to win every game to make the playoff. They don't have and that goes for any team really. I mean, and especially these top teams like Bama, like Ohio State, like Georgia, they don't have to win every game, and that makes it easier on them to not have to worry about that. And
Exactly.
So Bama's not going anywhere as long as Nick Saban's the head coach. And if they want to make a robot, Chat GPT Nick Saban and put him on the sidelines after that, I would.
It probably will happen. Who knows? 5 years down the road, we might
mean,
see it. Like Jake said, the Sabertron 3000, whatever it is, he's gonna come up and.
So
yeah.
Bama's not going anywhere. Just because they had and say what you want, they win the national championship in 2021, and if Jamison Williams and Mechie don't go down, I'm sorry, Georgia fans. You know it's true. We all know it's true. So, but Bama's not going anywhere.
I would agree with you on that one, Brian. And so now we are going to go.
Let's talk about the NFL.
Yeah, we're going to go over to our next segment with the NFL offseason free agency just starting.
Bears make a big trade with the Panthers. Panthers go up to #1 overall. Who are they taking, man?
Who are the Bears taking? So see, right now there's a lot of questions because I'm a Bears fan, and in the Bears media right now, who are the Panthers taking?
Yeah.
At #1, I think the Panthers are taking Bryce. Everyone, just like Jake said, everybody is saying CJ. I really think that the Panthers are going to go for Bryce. I think that's why they traded up to #1 because they had a feeling that maybe the Texans want CJ. Who knows? But I have a very strong feeling that the Panthers think that Bryce is their guy. The Panthers just signed a couple other guys the past couple of days to build up their free agency.
I'm only concerned with Bryce going to the Panthers, though. They just traded DJ Moore, their best receiver.
Exactly. That is the one problem.
Yeah, if they can get some guys that are at least serviceable, like Brandon Cooks is out there, available for trade. Adam Thielen is out there, who actually I think was.
He's meeting them today.
He was meeting with the Panthers,
Yeah.
this week. So if they can just get some guys that are serviceable, and maybe they won't have a top pick next year, but say they get some guys in the second and third round, Alabama or South Alabama wide receiver Jalen Wayne might be available. Throwing his name out there.
I mean,
South Alabama.
Yeah, he could be there too, but
no, the Panthers though. The trade came at a peculiar time. It came right after the combine, or a week following the combine, and that's what people think, because Bryce didn't do anything at the combine. He just measured, and that was it. His pro day is not for another 2 weeks, But C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson and Will Levis all performed at the combine, and C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson were really the two quarterbacks that stole the show. So that's why a lot of people think it could be for one of those guys, but. This is kind of the same situation a couple years ago when the 49ers traded up to 3 and everybody thought they were taking Mac Jones.
Exactly. I mean, it's like the same thing when the Bears years ago, I think it was 2018, maybe it probably was 2018, 2017, somewhere around there, where the Bears traded up to the #2 pick to take Mitchell Trubisky, and they passed on Deshaun Watson, they passed on Pat Mahomes, and it's like, it'll just be interesting to see what happens. And as a Bears fan, I'm intrigued to see what we do with pick 9, because we just picked up Tremaine Edmonds, just picked up T.J. Edwards. We still have a very laughable offensive line that can't do anything, and everybody's wondering, who are the Bears going to take at pick 9? Because obviously, I don't think we're going to go for receiver. We just got DJ Moore, we have Darnell Mooney, we have Claypool, we have a couple other guys there. And I'm not saying the Bears wide receiver group, yeah, they're good now that we had a DJ Moore, but I don't think they're anything insane or elite. It made us a little bit better, gave Fields another option on the field. Our defense picking up those guys between Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards is going to help be able to prevent some things. It just made the defense better than they already were. And I think that the Bears at pick 9 need to pick a tackle or guard, but then again, it's interesting because it's do you use pick 9 on a tackle or a guard, or do you wait till later rounds to get someone like that?
Well, and another thing I wanted to talk about is there's been a lot of quarterback movement in free agency. Aaron Rodgers discussed on the Pat McAfee show, said his intentions to play with the Jets right before we started recording this episode. We were waiting for that to happen, but there's a lot of quarterback movement. You see Jimmy G going to the Raiders. Taylor Heineke go to the Falcons. I'm sorry, Falcons fans, you're not getting Lamar.
I mean,
Darnold going to the 49ers. Baker Mayfield signed to the Bucs. Out of these quarterback moves, which one do you like?
I don't know which one I like. I really don't know
Derek Carr, the Saints.
I really don't know if I like any of them because you look at all of them and they're all like the Raiders, for example. The Raiders went from having Derek Carr to Jimmy G. Like you took basically the same quarterback.
From mid to mid.
Yeah, exactly. Literally from mid to mid. And then like you take Derek Carr as the Saints and you still have Jameis Winston re-sign as a backup potential. And it's like, will Jameis Winston even jump over Derek Carr? Because that could potentially happen too for the Saints. I think Derek Carr will start, but it's just like for all these teams, and then Taylor Heineke on the Falcons, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Baker just going to the Bucks, like that's
just screaming tank.
exactly. There's a lot of very mid quarterbacks, and I'm
Now,
like,
one
what?
I did like, and it's because of the backup situation. What you're going to do if this player gets hurt? The Dolphins signing Mike White from the Jets, just because of the fact that he's a serviceable backup to where, like what Jake said, Tua's probably going to get hurt. They're just waiting for it to happen.
Exactly. And Mike White did great stepping in last year after the whole Zach Wilson fiasco and did a great job stepping in. He obviously showed a few glimpses of not being too hot, too great, but he's a solid backup. And that's all that you need. Like Mike White, I think Taylor Heineke is also a solid backup, but he might be getting that starting job. A couple other decent backups like Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew could start on some teams, but then again.
And then there's depending on what the 49ers want to do, I've heard some buzz around them and Lamar. If they want to decide to trade Lance, or if by some miracle Aaron Rodgers goes back to the Packers, which probably won't happen at this point now. He says his intentions are to play with the Jets. What do the Jets do with Zach Wilson? Obviously the Packers are going to go with Jordan Love, but what do they do? What do the Lions do? Because
Jared Goff,
but Jared Goff.
Yeah. The Lions are. As a Bears fan, I think the Lions are still going to win the North next year. They just picked up David Montgomery yesterday, which hurt. As a Bears fan, that hurts. So, yes, I knew David Montgomery was gone. I knew he was going somewhere else. But to see him go to the Lions, I was like, oh, that was painful. And I think the Lions are going to be phenomenal next year. But they're not going to win a Super Bowl or go anywhere far with Jared Goff at QB.
The want to try and roll with Sam Howell when Lamar is out there, and Ron Rivera, and I saw somebody tweet about this yesterday. Ron Rivera wants to complain about the quarterback situation, but it's really on him because he kind of oversees a lot of the personnel because he's the head coach.
Exactly.
And so a lot of these quarterback moves, until Rodgers to the Jets is a done deal, all of them are kind of just.
They're mediocre. They're mediocre.
They're not anything special unless Lamar goes until Lamar goes somewhere, until Rodgers to the Jets is official.
Confirmed.
There's not really anything that we've been talking about this, but there's not really anything to write home about with these quarterback moves because, I don't think it makes these teams any better. Jimmy G to the Raiders could make some noise, but I'm personally not a big fan of Josh McDaniels as a head coach. He had a stint with the Broncos that was just very, very terrible. That's why he wasn't a head coach for another 15 years it seems like. But
it'll be interesting to see the NFL this next year because I feel like.
Tom Brady gone.
Yeah, Tom Brady gone. I just feel like the NFL quarterbacks are getting worse and worse. I don't know if that that's a hot take, but I really think that looking at all these teams' quarterbacks and who they're signing, it's looking at their potential starters. It's they really are mid.
It's really, and I don't want to dog the NFC, but it's really in the NFC where it seems like you only have Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, who's he had a bad year. But he still got Dallas in the playoffs. You got
Justin Fields, baby.
Whoever the 49ers roll with is probably going to be decent because any quarterback in that system works. Kyler Murray when he comes back healthy. The Rams are been discussing trading Matthew Stafford. So NFC is really where the NFL is weak at quarterback. But the AFC has so many guys that are really young and that can compete. AFC you got Burrow, Mahomes, Herbert.
Yeah.
If Russell Wilson can ever get back to form, Lawrence, Tua, if quit getting hurt, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, if he goes to the Jets, he'll be in the AFC.
Yeah.
So it's really just it's just a huge difference in AFC quarterbacks that have so much potential and so much talent, and then
compared to the NFC, yes.
I'm sorry, it's just
it is true. It is true. I agree, and it'll be interesting to see how the
Still
NFL
a
pans
long
out
way
this
to
year,
go.
and we still have a long free agency to go
The
to.
draft's
So
not for another month and a half. I mean, you got pro days starting. Georgia had theirs this week. South's is next week. Bama's is in 2 weeks. I mean, pro days. You got, I'm sure other trades will be made. You know, Cardinals sitting there at 3. You know, that something can happen with that.
big
So,
Austin Eckler trade possibly coming up too pretty
a lot
shortly.
of-
So
a lot of
yeah,
things
it'll
come out of this offseason.
it'll be interesting. But we hope you enjoyed episode 3 of the podcast. Then again, we cannot thank Jake Crain enough for being our guest on today's episode.
First ever guest.
Yeah, first
We
ever
hope to
guest.
have one for you next week as well.
Yeah, and we hope you enjoyed listening in on the potential season for what Bama's going to have and NFL free agency and stuff like that. But thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you.